If someone had told me that my most loyal friend would be my dog, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't love him, but because I never imagined he'd be the one to expose the truth. I had been away for 3 weeks on a business trip, consulting for a private security firm in Seattle. Late nights, long meetings, and too many coffee-fueled discussions about cyber threats had kept me distracted. I was exhausted but eager to get home. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 9 years. She was the love of my life, my safe place in a world full of chaos. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but I never doubted her. Trust was something I never questioned, until I walked through the front door that evening. The house smelled the same, a mix of her lavender candles and the faint scent of coffee lingering from the morning. But something was off. It wasn't anything tangible at first, just a feeling. Then my dog, Baxter, trotted toward me, tail wagging, eyes bright, and something in his mouth. A sock. I reached down, laughing as I ruffled his fur. "Did you miss me, buddy?" I said, trying to take the sock from him. But as soon as I touched it, my stomach twisted. I knew every single pair of socks in this house. And this one wasn't mine. I held it up, inspecting it. Black, expensive looking, not my style. I turned toward the laundry room, opening the hamper. Everything looked normal, until I noticed a second sock, its twin, at the very bottom of the pile. A man had been in my home. A man who wasn't me. Baxter, oblivious to the storm raging inside me, licked my hand, his tail still wagging. He had no idea that he'd just cracked open a truth I wasn't ready to face. I clenched the sock in my fist, forcing my breath to steady. My heart pounded in my chest, but my detective instincts kicked in before my emotions could spiral. If my wife had been cheating, I wasn't going to confront her blindly. I was going to catch her. I stood in the dimly lit hallway, my grip tightening around the foreign sock as my mind raced. I had spent years solving cases, uncovering deception, and reading people's lies like an open book. But now, my own wife was the suspect. I took a slow, deep breath. Rushing in with accusations would get me nowhere. If she had been careful enough to hide this, I needed to be smarter. I needed proof. I placed the sock back in the laundry hamper exactly as I had found it, making sure not to disturb anything else. I would see if it disappeared by tomorrow. If she was hiding something, she'd try to get rid of the evidence. Just then, I heard the faint sound of the shower running upstairs. Emily was home. I checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. If she had another man here, he was long gone. But I needed to know how long she had been home. I walked into the kitchen, scanning for anything out of place. The counters were spotless, but the scent of takeout lingered. I spotted an empty sushi container in the trash. 2 sets of chopsticks. That wasn't right. Emily didn't eat sushi. She hated it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our security systems app. We had cameras outside, but not inside. I never thought I'd need them. I checked the logs. The front door had been unlocked at 4:22 p.m. I tapped on the footage, watching as Emily walked in, alone. Or so it seemed. She had been cautious. She entered quickly, looked around, then motioned for someone. A second later, a man slipped in behind her, closing the door softly. I paused the video. My jaw clenched. Tall. Athletic. Dark hair. I didn't recognize him. I rewound, watching frame by frame. He carried nothing. No overnight bag. No work briefcase. Just himself. This wasn't business. This was personal. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think. If she had been seeing him for a while, there would be more evidence. The sock was just the beginning. I turned toward the stairs, hearing the water still running. Emily always took quick showers. This was longer than usual. Maybe she was clearing her head. Maybe she was thinking about him. I needed more. I moved to the dining table, where her purse sat. I had never snooped through her things before, but tonight was different. I wasn't looking for a reason to distrust her, I was looking for the truth. Inside, her phone was missing. She must have taken it to the bathroom. But her wallet was here, along with a folded-up receipt. I pulled it out. A hotel. Marriott downtown. Room 812. Paid in cash. Yesterday. My stomach turned to stone. The evidence was stacking up fast, and I hadn't even confronted her yet. Upstairs, the water shut off. I had minutes before she came down. Minutes to decide my next move. I slipped the receipt back into her purse and stepped away. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I wasn't going to let her know I was onto her. No. I was going to follow her. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter as I heard the bathroom door upstairs creak open. Light footsteps padded across the floor, followed by the sound of a drawer sliding shut. Emily was getting dressed. I had seconds before she came down, seconds to erase any trace of suspicion from my face. I took a deep breath and forced my body to relax. If she was cheating, she thought she was getting away with it. And I needed her to keep thinking that, for now. A moment later, Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, towel drying her damp blonde hair. She wore a simple t-shirt and leggings, the casual kind of outfit she always wore at home. She looked at me and smiled, like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't betraying me. "You're home early," she said, descending the stairs. I plastered on an easy grin. "Caught an earlier flight. Thought I'd surprise you." She leaned in, pressing a kiss to my cheek. I resisted the urge to pull away. "You should have told me," she said, running a hand through her hair. "I would have cooked something." I gestured to the sushi container in the trash. "No worries, looks like you already ate." She hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "Yeah, wasn't in the mood to cook." She didn't lie outright, but she didn't offer any more information either. I stepped away and stretched, acting casual. "You home all day?" Her expression didn't change. "Yeah, just work and errands." Lie. I had seen the security footage. I knew she wasn't alone. And that hotel receipt in her purse. It confirmed everything I feared. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I changed the subject. "You up for a movie tonight?" She smiled, looking relieved. "Sure. Let me just finish drying my hair." She disappeared into the bathroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I needed to know more. Who was the guy? How long had this been going on? Was this a one-time thing, or had my wife been lying to me for months? I had spent years tracking criminals, uncovering secrets, exposing deception. Now, my own wife had become my next case. And I was going to solve it. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app again. This time, I checked the license plate of the car that had dropped the guy off earlier. It belonged to a rental service. Good. That meant he wasn't local. I tapped a few keys, accessing a database I wasn't exactly supposed to have. Within seconds, I had the registration details. The car had been rented under the name Daniel Foster. I didn't recognize the name, but that didn't mean anything. What mattered was that now I had a lead. Emily might think she was covering her tracks. But she forgot one thing. I was better at this game than she was. Emily returned from the bathroom, her hair now dry, looking as normal as ever. If I didn't know what I knew, I'd believe everything was fine. But the evidence was stacking up. The sock. The sushi. The hotel receipt. The security footage. And now, the name Daniel Foster. I forced myself to stay relaxed, to act like nothing had changed. "What movie do you want to watch?" she asked, settling onto the couch. I sat beside her, keeping my expression neutral. Something easy. Maybe a comedy. She smiled. Perfect. We watched for about 20 minutes, but my mind wasn't on the screen. It was on my next move. I needed more. If she was sleeping with this guy, she wasn't just careless, she was confident. Confident that I wouldn't suspect a thing. That meant she wasn't hiding her tracks well. And I knew exactly where to look next. Her phone. Emily always kept it nearby, but she wasn't glued to it. If I was patient, I'd get my chance. Sure enough, after another half hour, she stood up and stretched. I'm gonna make some tea. Want anything? I shook my head. I'm good. She left her phone on the couch. I waited until she disappeared into the kitchen before I picked it up. The screen was locked, but that didn't matter. I knew her password. She had no reason to change it. I tapped it in, and just like that, I was inside. I moved fast, opening her messages. There were no recent texts from Daniel Foster. In fact, his name didn't appear at all. She had deleted their conversations. Smart. But not smart enough. I opened her call log. Blocked numbers. There it was. A number that had been called 16 times in the last month. I copied it into my own phone. Then I moved to her email. Nothing suspicious there, until I checked her deleted folder. A hotel reservation. The same Marriott downtown. But this one was for next weekend. She was planning to see him again. I heard footsteps. Quickly, I locked her phone and set it back down just as she walked in with her tea. She smiled at me. Still awake? Yeah, I said, forcing a chuckle. Guess I missed you too much. She laughed softly, sitting beside me again. You're sweet. I smiled back. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead of her. And by next weekend, I'd have all the proof I needed. I barely slept that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because my mind was already strategizing. Emily thought she was clever, covering her tracks just enough to keep me from noticing. But she underestimated me. And that was her biggest mistake. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1, follow the number. I ran the blocked number through a private database. Within seconds, the name popped up. Daniel Foster. Age, 36. Occupation, finance executive. Residence, Chicago. Not local. That explained the rental car. Step 2, track her movements. Emily had booked another hotel room for next Saturday. That meant I had a timeline. I didn't need to dig through months of old evidence, I just had to catch her in the act. I considered hiring a private investigator, but why waste the money? I was more than capable. I installed a GPS tracker under her car while she was in the shower. Nothing fancy, just something simple that would log her location. I could check it from my phone at any time. Step 3, stay close, stay invisible. If Emily suspected I was onto her, she'd get sloppy. That's exactly what I wanted. So I played the role of the clueless husband. The next few days passed normally. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, made small talk over dinner, even sent her cute texts throughout the day. She responded as if nothing was wrong. But I knew better. Friday night, she started laying the groundwork. I feel bad, she sighed, setting down her fork at dinner. But Joy needs me to cover for her at the conference tomorrow. I raised an eyebrow. On a Saturday? She nodded, looking frustrated. Yeah. It's at the Marriott. I told her I'd help since she covered for me last month. Lie. She was good, though. Her tone was casual, her story airtight. If I didn't have proof, I'd believe her. Instead, I just smiled. That sucks, babe. But I get it. She reached for my hand, squeezing it. You're the best. I'll be back Sunday morning, okay? Sunday morning. So she was spending the night. I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. No worries. Love you. She smiled, relief flashing in her eyes. I smiled back. Tomorrow, she'd walk right into my trap. Saturday morning, Emily kissed me goodbye, grabbed her overnight bag, and left. She didn't look nervous. Didn't hesitate. Because she thought she was getting away with it. I waited exactly 10 minutes before checking the GPS tracker. Her car was already on the highway, heading toward the Marriott downtown. Right on schedule. I grabbed my keys and followed. But I didn't drive directly to the hotel. That would be too obvious. Instead, I parked a block away, in a public garage, and walked. If she saw my car in the lot, she might get suspicious. I wasn't going to risk that. As I approached the Marriott, I put in my earpiece and tapped my phone. A hidden audio recorder was already in place. How? Simple. Last night, while Emily was asleep, I slipped a tiny recording device into the lining of her purse. Now, I was hearing everything. Rustling. Footsteps. Then, a soft knock. A door opened. A man's voice. Low. Confident. Daniel. Hey, baby, he murmured. Then the sound of lips meeting. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed more than just a recording. I needed visual proof. I walked into the Marriott lobby, keeping my head down, blending in. Businessmen, tourists, families, I was just another face in the crowd. I made my way toward the elevators and waited. 2 minutes later, I saw them. Emily and Daniel. They stepped off the elevator together, hands brushing, smiling like a happy couple. My stomach churned. She used to smile at me like that. I stayed back, watching as they walked toward the hotel restaurant. A romantic brunch. I snapped a few photos, then turned and left. It was enough. I had what I needed. But I wasn't done yet. Tonight, I'd give them the shock of their lives. By the time evening rolled around, I had everything I needed: photos, recordings, GPS logs. Proof that my wife wasn't just cheating, but doing it boldly. Emily thought she was untouchable. Thought she could lie to my face and walk away unscathed. But she forgot who she was married to. I wasn't just any husband. I was a detective. And tonight, she'd find out just how dangerous it was to play games with someone like me. Phase 1, the setup. At exactly 8:15 p.m., I booked a room at the Marriott. 1 floor above hers. The receptionist barely glanced at me as she handed over the key. She had no idea I was about to ruin a woman's life before checkout. I took the elevator up, walked down the hall, and waited near room 812. Emily and Daniel were inside. I knew because I could hear everything. The recorder in Emily's purse was still transmitting. Soft laughter. The clink of wine glasses. Then Daniel's voice, low and intimate. "You're so beautiful. I hate that you have to leave in the morning." Emily's giggle made my blood boil. "I know. But let's not talk about that now." Then, a sound I'd never forget. The rustle of bedsheets. I took a deep breath. Not yet. I wasn't going to interrupt them mid-act. That would be too easy. No, I wanted them at peak vulnerability. Phase 2, the reveal. At 10:30 p.m., I heard movement. They were done. I checked my phone. Emily's location was still inside the room. But Daniel? His dot was moving toward the elevator. Perfect. I walked toward the lobby, keeping my distance. Daniel stepped outside, heading toward the parking lot. I snapped a photo. His face, clear as day. Then, I let him go. He wasn't my target tonight. Emily was. I took the elevator back up, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. I stopped outside room 812 and knocked. Softly. Like room service. Inside, I heard footsteps. Then, the lock clicked. Emily opened the door. Her smile faded instantly. "Alex," she gasped, her face draining of color. For the first time in our marriage, she was speechless. I didn't say a word. I just held up my phone, displaying the photo of her and Daniel together. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." I tilted my head. "Not what you expected." She shook her head frantically. I can explain." I stepped past her, walking into the room. The bed was messy. The wine glasses half empty. The scent of cologne still lingered in the air. I turned back to her. "Go ahead," I said. "Explain." She opened her mouth. Then closed it. Because we both knew. There was nothing left to say. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes darting between me and the phone in my hand. She was trapped. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She wasn't expecting this. She thought she'd come home tomorrow, kiss me on the cheek, and pretend nothing happened. But now, she was standing half-dressed in a hotel room that reeked of betrayal, and there was no way out. She swallowed hard. "Alex, I raised a hand. "Save it." Her mouth snapped shut. I stepped further into the room, glancing around. The unmade bed. The wine glasses. The discarded clothes. Evidence. She made no move to clean it up. Because she knew there was no point. I turned back to her. "How long?" Her brow furrowed. "What?" I took a slow breath, keeping my voice level. "How long have you been screwing him?" Her face twisted, shame creeping into her features. "Alex, it's not what you think." I barked out a laugh. "Really?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." Her breathing hitched. She was scrambling, searching for a way to twist the truth. I didn't give her the chance. "You booked this room a week ago," I said, my voice colder now. "You planned this." I stepped toward her, lowering my voice. "You looked me in the eye, slept beside me, knowing you were going to come here and screw another man." She flinched. "Please, just let me explain." I shook my head. "You don't get to beg for mercy when you had none for me." Silence stretched between us. Tears welled in her eyes. "I made a mistake." I tilted my head. "A mistake?" I gestured around the room. "Emily, this isn't some drunken one-night stand. You've been seeing him. You lied to me. You covered your tracks. You planned this." Her hands were shaking now. "I never meant to hurt you." I scoffed. "Right. You just meant to humiliate me instead." She shook her head rapidly. "No. It's not like that. I still love you." A deep, bitter laugh rumbled from my chest. "Love me? Emily, you threw our entire marriage in the trash the second you let him touch you." Tears spilled over her cheeks. I held up my hand again. "Enough." She fell silent, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. I turned toward the nightstand, where her wedding ring sat. Not on her finger. Because she had taken it off. My stomach twisted, but I ignored the pain. I picked up the ring, rolling it between my fingers. "You know what the saddest part is?" I murmured. She swallowed hard. "What?" I lifted my gaze to hers, my expression unreadable. I was going to spend the rest of my life with you. Her face crumpled. I exhaled slowly, pocketed the ring, and turned toward the door. Alex, please, she choked out. I didn't look back. I opened the door, stepped out, and closed it behind me, leaving her alone in the wreckage she created. I walked out of that hotel room with my heart pounding, but not from pain. From focus. From clarity. Emily thought this was the end of the conversation. That I'd go home, maybe cry, maybe drink, and eventually forgive her. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't a man who begged. I was a man who finished things. Step 1, the exposure. I sat in my car, pulled out my phone, and opened the photo album. The pictures I took of Emily and Daniel at brunch. The security footage of him sneaking into our house. The audio recordings from the device in her purse. I compiled everything into a single folder. Then I sent it to Daniel's wife. And just for good measure, to Emily's boss. A few minutes later, I got a reply from Daniel's wife. Who is this? What is this? I smirked and typed back. Your husband's mistress's husband. Thought you should know. Then I blocked the number. By tomorrow, Daniel's world would implode. And Emily? She'd realize she wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. Step 2, the financial checkmate. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and pulled out my laptop. Emily and I had joint accounts, but I had always handled the finances. She barely knew how to log in. I moved 90% of the money into a separate account under my name. Legally, I couldn't empty it completely, but I could make sure she only had scraps left. Then, I canceled her credit cards. Let's see how she books her next hotel room now. Step 3, the final goodbye. An hour later, the front door opened. Emily walked in, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Alex, she whispered, stepping forward. Please. I raised a hand. Don't. She flinched. I set my drink down, pulled a manila folder from the table, and slid it toward her. She stared at it like it was a snake. What is this? I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. Divorce papers. Her lip trembled. You don't mean that. I tilted my head. Oh, I do. She shook her head. Alex, please, we can fix this. I swear I'll end it. I'll go to therapy. I cut her off with a chuckle. You still don't get it, do you? She blinked. I stood up, towering over her. This isn't a negotiation. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You lost. Her breathing turned shallow. I picked up my drink again and took a slow sip. You'll be hearing from my lawyer in the morning, I said simply. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Like she was realizing, for the first time, just how badly she had miscalculated. I walked past her, headed for the stairs, and paused only once. For what it's worth, I said, glancing over my shoulder. Daniel's wife knows everything. Her mouth fell open. You didn't. I smirked. Oh, I did. Then I left her standing there, watching her world burn. Emily didn't sleep in our bed that night. I didn't hear her cry. Didn't hear her plead. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she was trying to figure out how to salvage her mess. But I didn't care. Because I was already free. The fallout. By morning, the storm had hit. Daniel's wife. She didn't just confront him. She threw him out, publicly blasted him on social media, and filed for divorce the same day. Emily's boss. He didn't say much, just fired her. Apparently, they had a strict morality clause, and sleeping with a married man in a company-funded hotel room wasn't a good look. She lost her job, her affair, and her reputation in under 24 hours. And me? I was untouchable. The final conversation. That evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table, clutching the divorce papers. She looked up at me, her eyes hollow. Is there really no chance? I took a slow sip of coffee. No. Her breath hitched. Alex. I messed up. But I love you. I chuckled, shaking my head. No, Emily. You loved the security I gave you. The stability. The home. The life. I set my mug down. But you didn't love me. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want to lose you. I exhaled. You already did. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? She asked weakly. I turned back, one hand on the doorknob. Anywhere but here. Then I walked out. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Because I wasn't walking away from a marriage. I was walking toward a better future. Without her.